and just welcome everyone. It's so lovely that so many of you are able to make it today. My name is Eva DeGostini. I'm the coordinator of the Center of Excellence for Behavior Management, and I think most of you know me by now, as well as my two other coordinators, Martine Demers and Catherine
Morning.
Cora.
Hello.
So we are going to be presenting today on the Targeted Intervention Continuum. This is Martine and Catherine will walk you through it, so you will get the idea of exactly what it is, and it's a continuum to help with children who struggle with their behaviors. And it's also a continuum, hopefully, that will help the adults that are working with children who struggle with their behaviors, because it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. The presentation this morning. We did it during the school day. We know that many classroom teachers were frustrated because they felt they weren't able to come, and we will be making the material that we're sharing available to classroom teachers. But what we wanted to do was to share this with school administrators, school board administrators, professionals, consultants, resource teachers, perhaps a behavior technician if you were able to get away, to give you an idea of all of the things that are possible within a classroom and within a school to help children who are struggling with their behavior, so that we can just move things along and keep the atmosphere calm, which is particularly important in these times. So we're wanting to give you some tools in your hands, and Martina and Catherine will walk you through all of the tools, not only the continuum itself, which was created, but also some video capsules that we've put into place, so that when people are having a hard time imagining what this looks like, you can actually see what it looks like, and have some picture of it and a walkthrough of the
Mhm.
particular details. So I'm going to I'm going to take a little bit of a back seat here, and Catherine and Martina are going to walk you through the presentation today. So,
Perfect. So I will share screen. I thought before starting to show the document, Martin, we could just start with this image, just so
Mhm.
they could have a sense of the pyramid, the RTI model.
Perfect. So we've created the targeted interventions a continuum as a checklist to take a step back, to have a look at a group, to see what's in place when we're struggling or we're faced with some challenges, is to say, how is the foundation laid out, and how are we, what is into place, and are we getting the most out of those interventions? Do we understand fully what they mean? There are times where we have something set up, but we're not getting the full benefit of the intervention, and it's worth taking the time to revisit that. The purpose of the checklist is also to help us walk through with, if we have tier one and those interventions are in place, and we have our challenging students, because each school has a good handful of those, is what else can we put in place? How can we move the foundation interventions to a higher level to give added benefit to the support, to the interventions, but include the other key players that are supporters in the school? So who are your technicians, attendants, the professionals that are coming from the school boards to support you, to help guide intervention or coach interventions? So these become the extra layer that are outside the classroom, that are in addition to what the teacher is already implementing within the classroom. Now, that's not to say that we don't have support from technicians and attendants within the classroom. We do, but we also know that not all classrooms have the benefit of that support, and these are our best practices to look at. And then we also look at our orange section, which is our tier three, is these are our highly challenging students, that even when tier one and tier two is in place, there are times for these handful of students that we need to be able to take it even that a few extra steps further. And for some of those students, it'll be that the interventions will make the difference between being able to keep them in school, even though they may not be in class the full time. So that's what we're going to look at this morning. And Catherine, maybe we could just scroll down a little bit and we can come back to the details of what they are here. But on the left-hand side is we have video capsules, on the right-hand side documents, and Catherine has separated, she's our webmaster, and she's separated them in sections to make it easier visually to see, but we'll give you a snapshot view of those a little bit later. So let's go to the document, and this is downloadable, where if you click on the PDF, that you can then have access to that. And it's easy to work with. And for us, this can be part of a discussion starter. It is just a factual baseline look at what is in place, what might be missing. So the checklist is one that is non-judgmental. If you have a teacher who is feeling vulnerable because they're struggling with the group or they're tired and they've put so many things into place, this is a year that is quite different from others. The extra strain, and what we've noticed in the consulting and the support work that we're doing is that there are some teachers who it's as though some of what they were initially doing that they have implemented in their classrooms before is because of COVID, they were really doubting if they could continue with some of those interventions and
Mm.
knowing how key that was for some of their students. But at this point right now is doubting, could they still put those into place? So this was a way of kind of like addressing a number of issues. It's a one-pager document, so it's very short, simple, easy to use. And we've divided it in the sections of tier 1, 2, and 3, and we've done color coding just for that visual piece of what is inside the classroom, outside the classroom, and then what are the top-notch interventions for our most challenging students. So just as a quick review, is to be looking at, we are starting, like we know that this year students are all being kept in their bubble, in their group, and this is both within the classroom, but also outside at recess and lunch. And we know that for some students, that's quite a challenge, and it's not easy because they do want to be playing with their friends that are in other groups, and that's not possible. So we'll talk about emotions just a little bit into this discussion, but the key piece is let's look at so what do we hope to see in place? That we have teacher greetings that is happening daily, individually with each of their students. And most teachers do this quite intuitively and really have a good knack, and they build those personal bonds, those connections with students, and that really helps to set the stage and have the students feel very welcome to be coming into those groups. Teachers are usually quite good at structures and routines. And you know what? In a time of COVID and where things are happening right now,
Mm.
is there have been added structures and routines that have been put into place with visual cues, because that's just what is needed to be done. But at the same time, for some of our challenging students, this is actually a really good thing because things need to be clear, explicit, and that is making a difference with they know exactly what they need to do. And it's easy to cue them this way because the visual reference points of either tape on the ground or signs that are up or arrows on which way that we're walking are really helping to make a difference. One of the areas that we want to bring to zoom in on a little bit is the short work periods.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one that because of COVID and our brains being in a state of alarm, is our capacity to attend, to focus, to concentrate has been impacted. And it's not that we don't have the capacity, but it is of shorter time stretch and amount of effort capacity possible. So one of the key things, one of the areas that we're seeing a fair amount of struggle in is teachers who are trying to put through a lot of academic material and stretch out blocks of time when students have a hard time to attend. And so often this is giving a rise in a group where students don't have the capacity. It's not that they don't have the desire, it's that they don't have the capacity because of the present conditions. And then we can look at what are things that we can do to help that. And we have some alternate pieces here that can be helpful. For some students, alternate seating options and alternate workstations within the environment will make a huge difference to get more engagement and to reduce counterwill, the opposition that students might have towards work time. So having those different options. This was also an area where some teachers felt, well, because of COVID, we can't have the alternate seating options. Yes, we can, because you're working within the class group. If they need to go to another room, let's say if they're going to the resource teacher, it would need to be disinfected, but it can still be used. And that's the key piece is they can be used. So let's not put them aside when we know how helpful a tool they can be. Physical movement brain breaks after each work period is a great investment. We're doing a session on December 1st on brain breaks and
Mm.
looking at the neuroscience and the benefit. And this is not fluff. This is very much a need and how this can make a difference with attention concentration and capacity to hold on to information. So if we're able to include those within the classroom for the whole group, this is really the best. We also want to be looking at quiet time activities because we have the physical part of brain breaks, which is really beneficial. But then we also need to be looking at a break from work that is a quiet time also. This will give students, their brain, time to process the information that they've taken in. they're also working through different things, and they're doing problem solving in a different way when they're using quiet time activities. It also really helps to settle the brain. So those are pieces that having those available within the classroom in different ways. And again, many teachers have all of these things in place. And this also becomes validating if we're checking off the list with, yes, we have these, yes, we're implementing this with a group. So when we're looking at a challenging situation and we're able to check off a number of these and we go, yes, we do this, we're doing well with this, is it's also very validating for a teacher to know that, yes, not only am I on the right track, we're doing well. So let's keep looking to see how else can we help this student. Emotional release activities for the whole group is a piece that we're putting more emphasis on because of the amount of emotional energy charge that people have in them with the alarm with COVID, the frustration, so many frustrations of how many things are we not allowed to do that we
Mm,
can't do, wish we could do, no, we can't. I mean, it's just the buildup of energy. We need to have release activities to be able to push that out, to move it through, because if we just try to shove it down, it's like a pressure cooker that at some point will overflow. So there are times where we're looking at groups that are challenging, as this is an area where we could help daily to have different types of emotional release activities. And we'll have some resources to share with you after for those, because we need to reduce the pressure in the system. If we want learning to happen, we want kids to be able to focus and attend, we need to look at different areas of how can we help and support. The designated area within a classroom is a huge tool to have, and how it's set up. So again, we'll be looking at resources there. Many teachers have moved to having a designated area within their classroom over the past years. Again, this is something that we can have even in times of COVID. We might
mhm,
just need to readjust a little bit of what's in there, but at the same time, it's not a problem to have one. And for some students, having that within the classroom will make the difference with they're able to stay within the class or not, that they can take a break from their work, but not need to leave the room. Community projects is something that we have been putting a fair amount of emphasis on, especially around puzzle tables, Lego building area, a craft area. Again, this is a way of switching gears that when students are finished work or that we provide time for community projects, is that this is something that will also be helpful in processing, working through things, trying things out. They don't always need to work out. How can we try and try again? And that there is no consequence or anything negative that's coming out of that. Now, if we are able to have increased opportunities to be outside, we've got the cherry on top here,
mm,
especially the fact now that kids need to be kept within a certain structured area outside. If at times we're able to take them out during, not during those structured times, so that they don't need to stay just within their blocked area, just that freedom of movement and fresh air is huge. So teachers have been able who have been able to take students outside to do classes outside. This has been a great bonus this fall. So this covers our area for tier one. I don't know if there's something else you want to add there, Catherine, if I missed something or something else that came to mind that might help people.
I think one of the things, and it came across to me yesterday speaking to a school team, where sometimes we'll put into practice certain approaches or certain strategies, and we'll realize that short term we're not getting the fruit that we're expecting.
Hmm.
And just to keep in mind, given COVID and all of the stress and all of the limitations and the parameters that the kids have, sometimes the gain that we're getting is not necessarily seeing major progress, but if we're able to even neutralize or to have a place where the kids are even being able to express and to let out, let's see this as a success. It doesn't mean that we're not, that there isn't an impact. It's just that the impact is not happening perhaps in the way that we are hoping that it's going to come up. And of course, as time passes by, the more that we can do this, hopefully in baby step, we can build and build and build. And so let's celebrate the small successes.
Hmm. And right now, I would say if our first angle of intervention is to help reduce pressure in the system,
Yeah,
we're already making headway. So,
exactly.
like you're saying, to neutralize, reduce, to hold on. There was a question I saw in the chat regarding yoga. Would that be part of tier one
Mm,
if we're doing yoga with a group? Yes. Yeah, I know of some that are using the box program. There are so many different angles. It doesn't need to be one or another. And I would actually encourage having a great variety and for the teacher to be engaging with it in it with the students, so that enjoyment factor of being there and doing that and having it together is the bonus. and it's also helpful for the adults. So it's like it helps us too. So tier 2 is for our challenging students, where we're looking at, okay, so we have tier 1 into place, and we should be getting, good feedback from that layer of intervention. And what can we move to the next level? Because our challenging students, that's not enough. They have particular needs where they need additional adult support, guidance, and checking in. So one of our first pieces is around check-ins, and we have 2 video capsules with that, which will explain in detail what we mean. But the key is that it is with a significant adult, and if we're able to have it with that adult the whole time, if we're able. If not, if we have a backup, or if we have it with 2 people, but hopefully we build in as much consistency as possible. And we know that staffing is sometimes an issue in a school. So, and that's where I'm saying as much consistency as is physically possible in your school. We're looking at using the designated area at scheduled times. So we're moving it from it's open to everybody, but for our challenging students, we might say they have scheduled times there. So it might be like coming back from recess, they get 10 minutes there. Coming back from lunch, they get 10 minutes there. So looking at, can that be maximized, or that we add certain materials to the designated area for a few particular students who really need and benefit those. We might decide to assign alternate seating and alternate workstations as a second option for them, because they need to have access to that if we're going to be able to maximize their attention, their concentration, their focus. Then we're going to look at, okay, so we have brain breaks happening within the classroom, and some just have a little bit more energy than that, and it's got to go somewhere. Otherwise, it will disrupt in the classroom. And sometimes that just sets off other students. So are we able to set up movement stations within the school? It could be with posters, it could be different ways that this is done, but are we able to set up movement breaks outside the classroom? It could be in different locations in the school. So it could be going to different places on rotation, so that we can keep the interest factor and the motivation high. Now, the students would most likely need to be accompanied here, unless they're older students and they've got that
Mm.
autonomy that you could trust them in the hallway to do that. Other students, well, they just really need that supervision, but also they could have the adult getting involved there also, and that would really support them. For some students, having scheduled breaks in another location will be an asset, but will also very much be needed. So it could be at different times, different places. Now, I know COVID, that's an issue. We need to really
Mm.
be careful with the bubbles. However, is we are able to do it if we really map it out. So the key is, are we seeing that there are certain times that the student is not able to cope, and that we need to put this structure into their schedule? Because by doing this, we are not only reducing the pressure for the student, we are reducing the pressure in the group and for the teacher, but also working at preserving all of those relationships. Because when a challenging student is struggling and is highly impacting a group, the social relation, the personal relationships there really get tampered on. So our goal is to, how can we help preserve some of that? The other thing is we're looking at having a personal ban or a personal choice board. These are interventions that we also have video capsules to give more details, but the personal ban stems from the quiet time activities that a student would have in a class, but that they have it in a bin so that they could be taking it out when they need to go to another location. So the key is that there would be a discussion had before with the student, and looking at what are some of the choices, options, things that they enjoy doing that help them switch gears that could be added to that. So it is something that is prepared, that is set up. So whenever there is a need for the student to step out, is that we're able to have that. You've got mail. Teachers have historically found very creative ways of sending students to be messengers. For some students, they need to have it that it's a physical piece, that they're not only are they going out, but when they're heading to a destination, is that there is physical movement activity for them, something that is set up. So we have prepared 4 templates. 2 are physical, 2 are quiet time activities. You could have a look at those. They're there to be downloaded. Catherine will show you more after.
Mhm.
But those are pieces that, like, we know that's not the end all be all intervention, but we also know that for some teachers, this has made a difference. And with some students, this has made a difference. The end of day recap is very much tied into the daily check-ins. Some students cannot handle the hustle and bustle of the end of day, that they disorganize within the classroom. Are we able to do a check-in, which is at the end of the day, we call end of day recap with that significant adult, either that they come to the classroom or that the student is brought to another location and it's the same place every day. So it might be a nurturing support center. It might be your technician room. It might be the resource teacher's room. But for some students, being able to remove them out of the hustle and bustle of the group and the hallways will make that their end of day can be a lot more successful and less stressful for everybody.
Mm.
And our key is then also is ongoing communication, because usually with a tier 2 student, other adults are involved in the picture, not just the teacher. So ensuring that we have that, that cycle of communication that is happening, so that everybody's in the know. If there are areas of struggle or things not working, that we can give a heads up. And it's very much like a human baton relay team.
Mm. Two things come to mind, Martin. I just wanted to
Yep.
add, in terms of the movement breaks in the hallway, we've had comments at the beginning of the school year where administration have said, well, we can't really now with COVID have kids being in the hallways and doing movement breaks. And one of the things that we had come up with was, rather than having, materials, because of course with disinfecting it's a problem, we have created these posters coming from licenses from Teacher Pay Teacher. So these are things that you could find on your own. We have created some. If you're curious, you could write to us and ask us more about it. But the idea of the poster is there's no material. It's just the poster on the wall. It's laminated so it can be disinfected, and the child can do it right by the classroom. It doesn't have to be like those pathways in the hallways that could take the child very far. They can stay near the classroom door, and so it makes it easier in terms of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one piece. The other piece too that I wanted to bring up is sometimes, with all of these movement breaks, we're thinking that it's going to help the student. And I would say for 90% of students, it does help. But I have noticed over the years that there's a small proportion of students for whom sometimes too much movement tends to be overstimulating. And then it creates a perverse effect. And especially now in COVID with all the stress, sometimes it could bring them over the top, and being overstimulated rather than being able to release or to channel it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the point of the individual personal bins and the choice boards are there for you and the student to figure out what is it that works for that child. For some kids it is something that is more low centered type of activity. Somebody mentioned yoga, and so that could be a great activity, or something that's quiet, and so just kind of getting to know your students and seeing what works and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And with the personal bin is switching things up also, so that
Yes.
it stays interesting and that we can introduce new kinds of activities there. Anything that they can manipulate with their hands is
Mm-hmm.
often quite helpful as a calm down, like calming down activity, because the physical movement is good to get the big energy out. But then we need to, in order for them to be able to go back to class successfully, is they need to be in a calmer state. We don't want them going back into class causing havoc because they're so hyped and over energized. So there
Mm.
needs to be that balance. Um, okay, so getting into tier 3 here is a small proportion of our students, and we call them our highly challenging students. These are students that even with tier 1 and tier 2, that we have targeted interventions and we have gone to specific details of addition, is we still need to do more, because we see that even with all those pieces into place and we can keep reworking and tweaking and adjusting, is that they need more, that the whole day in class, even with some removal interventions that are even targeted at certain times, is that it's hard for them. So for some of these students, the daily check-ins will not only be daily, but they will be several times each day. Again, if we're able to have the same or two significant adults, is really the asset. They might need to have adapted schedule where we know per se that there are blocks of time in the week. It's known that they will not be in the class, and they are assigned to another location with a specific adult that they know who they're going to and they know what they're going to be doing there. And often twofold is, there will be some academic, but the bigger part of it will be more emotional work intervention to try to make some headway in that area around expression, around naming, around being able to manage themselves, and to make some headway there to help to unlock some growth to come through. So that might be in the resource room, it might be in your technician room, or if you have a nurturing support center. But the student is also provided with a visual schedule so they know when they're in class and when they're not in class. And the goal here is that we need to really share this as this is part of intervention. This is not a consequence. It's not because they're a bad student or behaving badly. No, it's because they need to grow in a different
Mm.
way, and we're providing support in a different way. And this is what it's about. So the key is having targeted interventions of what we're going to work with them, but also that we take the lead and put that structure in. Now, for some students, we might even need to do half days out of the classroom because it's more than they can handle. Now, some of our students in kindergarten and grade 1 often struggle with that big adaptation, their capacity to sustain, and sometimes the behaviors are really high. So it's an issue of safety, but it's an issue of how much are they able to manage and how much capacity. And part of the work that we do in the support work here is really looking to mimic some of the structures and routines of
Mm.
having a rhythm that are similar to the classroom, so that it's a individualized coaching of those interventions. So this is really what we're looking at here. The other part is the end of day recap we will also do. And the key is, how are we able to communicate and share all these pieces of information? So for our highly challenging students, we're going to be making adjustments and tweaking interventions as we go. And we will say that it's for a transition time, like a block of time, but we don't put an end date to it because we
Mm.
don't know how fast they're going to grow or how they're going to be able to manage or cope with the situation. So the key is we're looking to how, like, are we able, or how can we be able to maintain them in school even though they may not be in class full time. Now, hopefully, this is just one or two students in your school and not a huge
Right.
cluster. Because if we seem to have many students in this group, it is worth going back to tier 1 and tier 2 to say, what do we have in place and how well are those interventions being implemented? And could we or should we be asking for additional support in those areas to hopefully not have many students in tier 3, because a tier 3 student is quite a good challenge, and it can be quite challenging for the team, but also for the student, because they find school really difficult and it's hard to be there the whole day.
Mm.
Is there something else you would want to add there, Catherine, before we go to?
I think you covered the last part. I mean, that's what I was thinking in my mind. I was kind of thinking, those students who find themselves into tier 3, if we've got many of them, I think that's a sign that perhaps we need to take a step back and to look at
Mhm.
the other places. Have we covered? And sometimes we may think that we're covering a section, but maybe it's not the what, but the how. And
Mhm.
so going, like, for example, the designated area in the class, and going back and seeing how are we utilizing it? What's the materials that are there? Does the child see this as a punishment, or the child sees this as a safe place where to go?
Mhm.
And so that's the other piece too, right? It's not just about
Yeah.
the what we're doing, but how we're doing it.
How we're doing it, who, like if you have an attendant or a technician coming into a classroom, is how can we maximize their support in
Yeah.
coaching the students? Because the teacher is leading the group, and the teacher has the challenge of the group. And I've seen teachers be so intricate with, their dance of, like, providing that individual support within the context of a group. But at the same time, is if you have like 3, 4, 5 students that are more challenging, it becomes really hard to spread yourself thin that way. So,
For
are
sure.
there interventions that we could even do with the whole class, which is some of the emotional release activities, but really working the brain breaks, really working short blocks and having lots of
Mm.
movement, but also looking at how are we benefiting from, the resource teacher support of, coming in and things that are set up and how they're set up. So I think hopefully this is a tool that, that can be of an asset to you in
Mm.
discussions, to look at what are different things that are in place, because there are times where we are faced with a challenging group and we go, like, where do we start? and and
Yeah.
and this helps us kind of like, yeah, but this one, this student. And there's a part here where we need to look at, do we have the foundations in our environment and in
Mm.
how we are working to manage the group? in order to prime for easier management. But there are times where some of the students, the amount of immaturity, the amount of situations that they're coming in with, like they're loaded with precipitating factors and emotions and just charged up, that it is worth looking at the lay of the land. But then we do need to look at, what are the particulars with our challenging students and our highly challenging students, because there may very well be another number of resources that need to be tapped into to provide the best support. And how can school remain that safe place, home base? Because for some of our students, this is the place.
Right.
And how can we help that be supportive and creative? Because what we hopefully don't want is that any student feels that they are too much to handle at school. Because if we increase the alarm and frustration, then they're going to try to be in charge of everything, and they're not meant to be in charge. The adults are
Right.
meant to be in charge, but there are times it's worth having those group discussions to be able to pull back and say, okay, so where are we doing really well? Where are we maybe needing some tweaking? And how can we help and add in support there? And that it's a team effort. And I think for teachers, the clear message is when we get to tier 2 and tier 3 is, please let us share the weight of these challenging
Exactly.
students, that you're not meant to solo with this. And I think that's a key piece for me that I really hope that people hear with this document is it comes with support. It comes with different layers of challenging students, is that it comes with other adults become involved. So for the teacher, hopefully, is feel that team behind you, that you've got a cascade of support behind you, so that you are not solo with it, that they have a big task. And I lift my hat to teachers, and I think the key is, like, big time, and the key is you're not alone. You're not alone. So for us here is, we are hoping that this is a tool for administrators with school teams, with their teams, and
Exactly.
we'd love to hear your feedback.
And to reiterate one of the points that you made, Matson, that's really an important piece, is for tier 3 students, to keep them in school is a success. It's not about focusing and keeping him or her in class. And so being able to maintain them with support in school can be just as much as a success for a child in tier 3. Okay. So I will go back
Success
to
for
the
them
website.
and success for the team, because for
Yes,
some students there are so many variables around them to keep them coming to school every day, that we know where they are, and we can help convey that sense of safety and home base, and we've got you.
exactly. So to guide you in terms of our website and where you can find the materials, and so I'm on the home page right now, and so the address, which I'm sure most of you have found since you registered for this presentation, so www.cebm.ca, you will get to this home page, and there's two places you can go through to get to it. You've got a box here which says Intervention Continuum. You can click on this box and it will take you to the page, or you can go through the menu under Projects, Intervention Continuum. You click onto here, and that's going to take you to the page. Now, you'll see here that we actually have a recording. Martin and I did a recording for those who, and we actually have the recording of today as well. And so the two of them can be shared. If you have colleagues that could not attend today, they could either go and watch this one, or we'll make the other one available as well through our YouTube page. And so you can watch it through here. The actual document that we just shown, and so if you click onto this, it will take you to that document that we were just going through. You can download it, you can print it, save it onto your computer. And so we've got it there to explain the color coding for the RTI model. And then Matson quickly mentioned earlier, and I'll go through it now, we wanted to make it very easy and very clear all of the attaching documents that we have for each tier. And so you've got tier 1 with the universal interventions, tier 2 for the targeted, and tier 3 for the individualized. All on the left-hand side are different video capsules that are on our YouTube channel. And on the right-hand side are all downloadable documents. I'll show you some. So for example, this one, the classroom brain break activities, if you click on there, it's going to take you, oops, give me a second, sometimes there we go. It will take you to our YouTube channel, and then you will have the video there. So this one is about 15 plus minutes. I would say a typical video is about 7 to 8 minutes. That's one of our longer ones, because we do have kind of like a longer explanation behind the neuroscience that explains the purpose or the importance or benefits of brain breaks. And so this is where you would get to view the videos. So every single link here is a different video. And then here on the right-hand side, which are the documents, again, for example, if I were to click on emotional release activities, that would take you to this document. So Martin talked about doing classroom release activities. We've got a colleague of ours, Hannah Beach, that has created, and she's got them on her website, but we also have them here, different types of activities that are COVID friendly, where there's a use of art, a use of music, of movement, where kids can just let out some of that emotion. One of the ones that I really love is the frustration monster. So that's one of those. And so you've got here tier 1, you've got here tier 2, and then tier 3. I actually need to add more here in terms of tier 3, but we do talk about our Nurturing Support Center here for those who don't know what that is. And then down here at the end, these are original intervention continuum documents that Martin and I had created. We have one that's a general one for in the classroom and the sequence all the way to the office. And then the other one is for transitions. We're actually working right now on a project for indoor recess. We know with COVID, it's been really tricky sharing the yard, and also with winter that's coming. And so trying to help teachers equip them with, so we're on this project. I also wanted to share with you guys,
Catherine, maybe just to let
yeah,
people know with the indoor recess project is we're
yeah.
hoping to do a session in early January
Oh yeah, right.
to launch that. So to walk people through it. And we're looking at having downloadable documents that will make it really easy if teachers want to try the resources, is that they could just really like bicycle, be able to download and use. So to try to make
Cool.
it really user
Whoops.
friendly.
So since I worked on it over the weekend, I also wanted to show you guys that we translated some of the documentation to French. And so the video is still in English, but you've got now the document here that is downloadable in French, the exact same document that we just presented to you guys. Of course, the video capsules and the documents, the additional documents are still in English, but at least you've got the main one that's there and that is translated. So I just wanted to show that to you guys. The other thing I wanted to show you as well, since in the same idea, we have a page that we've created. Some of you may already know this. We've created a page for schools. We've got for parents, but for schools. And these are the presentations that Eva Martin and I presented back in August. And, like, for example, when we were talking about the emotional release activities, this would be a wonderful video for those who have not seen it, that I would strongly suggest. We've got the resource guide that's here with all of the activities, both in English and in French, for the release activities, the background as to why it is a benefit and important to look at release emotional activities with students. And so we've got that. There's a bunch of different videos. We've got more documentation here. And I would also invite you to go and take a look at our articles. Those two could be a wonderful addition in terms of reading the behind the scenes as to why some of these approaches or strategies would be important. Martin, am I forgetting anything?
No, I think you've covered quite a bit there.
All right.
I think
and
we
so
can come back to the group and look if we have questions.
Let's do that. Oh, chat is.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it while I was sharing the screen.
No, actually, people, we have just a few comments and questions, and I think I'm assuming that people were, just fascinated by what you were saying, and so now this is the time. If you have questions, please do put them into the chat box. I did want to just add a few little things. I mean, first of all, and I think Martine, you already said it, is that we're not anticipating that the actual checklist is probably all that different from what you already have in the back of your mind.
Right.
what we're doing is bringing it to the front of
Yeah.
your mind, putting it down on a piece of paper, making it easy to find, showing, and so we know that many of you, this is how you operate, this is how you work. But sometimes it's like a map, you kind of know where you're going, but it's really nice to be able to see it. So that's one of the things about this. The other question is, the other thing that just came to my mind around the You've Got Mail is because having worked as a school psychologist for many years, I empathized with teachers who said, I knew this child was starting to lose it. And I said, well, then, you know what? Let's find a way to get the child out of class. Well, if I ask him to leave, he's going to get really upset. So the trick here is to give the child something to do that feels dignified, that doesn't feel like you're sending him away, but rather that you're sending the child to someone. And so the trick is to catch it at that moment, or if it's an older child, to talk to that child. Because I was just dealing with a student who had these kind of difficulties and knew she had to leave the classroom, but she needed a dignified way of just being able to leave, and so that the other kids didn't think she was weird, So very often it's giving that space that can make all the difference to both the teacher, the classroom, and to the child as well. How can we
Yeah.
do it in a dignified way? So those are just two little thoughts that I had.
Love
But
it.
thank you so much, Martina and Catherine.
Just
We have
to
a comment
piggyback on one of
question.
the things you said, Eva, was just also is the use of the checklist. And from some of the feedback that I've received since we put it out, I mean, it's what, about 2 months now that we've been working with it, is that it gave a neutral place where it wasn't judgment with the teacher. It wasn't like coming a conversation where the teacher felt judged, like, oh, like you think I'm not doing enough. And I think that is a piece where it's no, it's factual of, are these things in place? And how well are they in place if we want to go there? And if we feel that it's too vulnerable, well, people have that sense of like, well, too vulnerable, we know this might be an area that we want to work on. But at the same time, if the vulnerability is too high, then we know that we need to just tread very carefully there. But the fact that it's a list was a guide and a neutral piece. It was like a central point, but not a zoomed in on the person. So some people have, that's the feedback, some of the feedback that I've had.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't, as you say, we don't want to make anyone feel that they're not doing enough, because
Oh no.
everyone is doing more than enough.
For sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes, again, as if you're an administrator, if you're a professional, if you're a consultant, sometimes it's helpful to show the list to someone, but you also have to be aware it could be also overwhelming
Yeah.
as well. But I think the other thing too, Martine, that you said, which is really important, is that you can already say, oh, well, look, you're already doing this. Oh, you're a person who has really good structures in your classroom. Oh, I see that you've set up an area that could be used for designated. So, so we let people know what they're already doing that is helpful, and just understanding that even though we've done everything right, for some children under certain circumstances, it can just be too much. So we use
And
that
sometimes
way.
it's also the guiding of a support person coming in, be it a technician or an attendant, of how can they help with what the teacher is trying to do. And they can be that, like getting the tail end of the train, that support to guide the student, to coach them. And then the teacher can be commenting on like, oh my goodness, I see a change. Like I saw you using that well, like, wow. But it's because they had that tail end support that they were actually able to do it. But it also helps to give the added mission or clarification of how exactly or what exactly could be tried to help to add to what is already in the mix. I think that's a piece. The other part is the resources that Catherine showed you with the video capsules. I have on another occasion in discussion with a technician and a teacher where we're trying to look at, okay, so different things are in place. How else can we support, and can we provide some information? And I emailed the links to 2 video capsules for the designated area and the personal bins to the teacher to say, please have a look when you have a few minutes, and that can be part of a next discussion. Well, she emailed back saying, oh, I realize that I have the designated area in place. Maybe there's some things in there that I should remove because they're not really being used, and maybe it's confusing. But then I also gave you ideas on maybe there's a couple of other things that I could add, and then we could explain it. And so she said, I have the intervention, but I realize I'm not getting the best bang for my buck here. So I think even that reflection to me was huge. because the teachers is saying, you know what, we're just not getting the full result. We've invested, but we're not getting the full result. So coming back to your earlier comment, Catherine, where it's
Mm,
change is not going to happen overnight.
no, for
But
sure
if we
not.
can reduce the pressure, and it's just that that
Exactly.
student, this is a grade 2 student, is not
Yeah.
running out of the class, but is going to the designated area, then we've increased safety where we don't have a kid running out where we need to put like an APB on where is the student. So seeing little steps of progress can also make a huge difference, but
Mm-hmm.
also really validating to the adult. Okay.
Mm. So there was a comment here related to COVID. If a specialist wants to go from class to class to do with the kids something like yoga, as long as there's no direct contact with students, is that okay? They were thinking in terms of COVID. I mean, I'm assuming, in schools, specialists are going from class to class,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if that's happening, I don't see why, in the same fashion, if a specialist were to do yoga rather than doing, like music, for example, I don't see why that would be a problem.
I think so too. As long as they're keeping the social distancing,
Hmm.
I think it
Yeah.
would be, you know what, the other thing that I would see there is if somebody is trained and is wanting to do that, I would see that as a support to the teacher, and I would tend to think the teacher would be very appreciative,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
have
I
that
mean,
extra bonus and to join in and be able to enjoy that activity, but also expose the kids. It reduces the pressure where it's not the same adult in the front all the time.
right, right.
Yeah.
There was a comment earlier, somebody had said, I find that schools are not interested in having physical breaks around the school. They are concerned about contact transmission in the hallway outside of their specific classroom area. They do not want to use any equipment. Do you have any suggestions? And so I'm assuming that's before I had mentioned that, of course, with the posters, we're trying to limit not having equipment. And so with the poster, it's closer to the classroom. It doesn't mean that the child will be everywhere and around the school.
Hmm.
And so that would be a way to address that issue. And of course, you could also have a corner, like we have a designated area to cocoon. There could also be a designated area for physical movement in the classroom if the class is big enough.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Catherine, there was a question here about it says, what is the YouTube handle for the vids?
So I'm
Videos.
not sure I understand the question, but if I think I understand the question, you're asking me for the access of the videos, and so just so you know, the videos themselves are not listed on our YouTube channel. So if you go through YouTube and get to our channel, you won't see them all there. You need to click through our website to get to see them. But once you do see them, you do have the URL on top. And when Matson was saying that she was sharing those videos with colleagues, you can just copy paste the URL and that will give you direct access to those videos. It's just that you won't, because there's so many of them. I didn't list them all onto our YouTube channel. So I hope I've answered the question. If that's not it, then please ask again. He says thanks. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So there was another long question. I don't know, Eva, if you want to read it.
Yeah, and again, I think this maybe is sort of a little bit more a tier three. That sounds definitely like a tier three
Okay.
student. And I think because we don't have other questions, I think this is probably one that will preoccupy
Mm,
some of the people that are present today. So this is a student who has highly aggressive. And the question is, how would you go about allowing him to get that aggression out? I thought about having him whip beanbags at a wall in a different room, but should that have happened at times where he is showing aggression or at random times
mm,
before he gets aggressive? It happens very randomly and seems to be emotionally driven. He is autistic and nonverbal. We
mm.
want to address the aggression, especially if he's trying to hurt someone. So we've been doing time outs to help de-escalate, but I'm just wondering how to go about replacing the behavior. Any suggestions?
It's a really good question. Uh, I mean, I think it's both. You were talking about doing before or after or during. Martin, Eva, and I did a presentation back in was it in June, where we did a whole presentation on making sense of aggression and understanding the root of that being frustration and how can we channel it, how could we allow for venting and allow for release. And so I would say that it needs to be tackled from many different angles. And so I think first off, trying to see in terms of the context, are there things in the context that is triggering that child? Can we set up the environment in a way that can allow for less triggering? So sometimes
Hmm.
that could be a piece. And then also looking at, like Martin was saying in tier 2, scheduling times for that child where they could go either cocoon or that they could go and release, that they would have a designated area where they would go determine location outside of the class. And so I would say it really needs to be addressed at many different levels. Martin, do you want to add something?
I think no, you're right on, Catherine. And my piece would be to say there needs to be outlets every day, because there's
Mm-hmm.
incoming frustration sources every day. And the fact that he's not verbal is there needs to be expression coming out. Otherwise, it's like a pressure cooker building up.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that, are we able to maintain like structure and routine so that we're not increasing his alarm and frustration, but there needs to be planned outlets every day. I also would, I don't know if the word timeout was used with him and he's heard that, but I would actually say, let's go get some energy out. I would not use the
Right.
word timeout because it has
Right.
a negative connotation, and more as a, I need to get energy out. Let's go do whatever. And if there's heavy work things that could be done, those would be pieces that I would encourage.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key is looking at different strategies of getting frustration out, but all kinds of energy, because there's a whole part with COVID and the alarm, and how people are concerned with like just the whole physical safety, our own safety of, are we going to catch it or not? And you can be doing everything that you're told you need to do, even if you don't want to do them and you're doing them, you're still not guaranteed you're going to stay safe. So there's that whole piece of how can he express that, like his fear, his concern. And so I think there needs to be a lot of opportunities
Mm-hmm.
for physical stuff to come out. But then I would also look, what are ways to help calm, to appease,
Mm-hmm.
to find sense and order. So I would work at having things set up around that are available to him, that can be around building and creating, that can be around touching textures, to just on a sensory level. Does that help to appease? Is there any
Mm-hmm.
yard projects, anything? And making create, it doesn't matter what it is, the actual piece of what it is. And I would also look at having puzzling available. Is that something that could be appealing to him? And it would just be interesting to see what he gravitates to at different times, and to
Exactly.
try to read the patterns of what you're seeing, because he can't verbally tell you, but his behaviors and what he goes to, if we've set up the environment that there are opportunities around, that in itself will come to speak to the adults who are the observers and have the best sense of him at school.
For
Yeah.
sure.
I would
And of
also
course, oh,
encourage mom and dad to have some things at home
yeah.
also, because it's
Yeah.
not just on the school to do that, because I'm sure he's coming in charged. So there are different pieces, is really sharing some of the information with parents so that they can also be providing outlets on home base.
Mm. And I was going to say, given that he's autistic and that he's nonverbal, it doesn't mean that he has nothing to say. It's just that the
He's
words
got
are not
lots
the
to say. Yeah.
exactly. It's that it's just that it's not the words that are
Figure it
the
out. Yeah.
channel.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing too. And again, it's difficult because we don't know this particular child.
for sure.
And so
Hmm.
you need to go with him, but also play and fun.
Mm.
I had a little girl that was referred to me, for whom the bus ride was very frustrating. So she arrived at school completely full of frustration. Well, the person who greets her at the door of the bus should maybe take her. Let's go for a run. I don't know what's happening with leaves right now. You guys maybe maybe there's snow in where you are, but let's kick a little bit of snow. Let's kick some leaves just for fun, right? I'm a big fan of either bubble wrap or egg cartons. Let's do some stomping so that we know the release has to happen, but we do it in a fun way. Again, you have to try and see, does that work for that particular child? But I thought, oh my goodness, the little girl's coming off the bus full of frustration. Let's
Mm.
help her get some of that frustration out in a fun kind of a way as well. So it's a learning process. You're walking through the maze. Sometimes something will work, sometimes it won't. For some children, getting it out is enough. For others, as both Martina and Catherine mentioned, you have to get it out and then bit by bit bring them back in so that the sympathetic nervous system isn't overactivated. But if we understand that if we wait until it happens, it might be really hard to guide it. We need to kind of
Hmm.
give it a place before.
And if we release pressure regularly, it most likely over time will not reach the same highest levels.
Mm.
And if he has a safe place to go to, even that would be a piece where if he takes off and this is where he goes, we go, thank you for making a good choice in coming here, because that may have prevented an explosion somewhere. So part of it is really reading who he is and setting up spaces in the environment that can help him be as expressive as possible without repercussions and without anybody getting hurt or their sense of safety feeling like it's being impacted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and we have a lot of our children. I know that all three of us have had referrals. We
Mm-hmm.
just seem to have children who are exploding more, but I think that's just because the level of emotional um, agitation that we all have is higher. It's harder for us. We get affected by it as well.
Absolutely.
So, that is why, and again, I encourage all of you either to come to our brain break session to listen to the recordings or to listen to the video capsule that has already been prepared and the capsule on emotional release, because we all need to be dealing with making sure that our emotions move through.
Mm.
And I know I had a teacher say, but I've got the whole curriculum to teach this year. I don't have time for this. And I said, well, first of all, if you don't take the time, your children are going to react and you are going to, if you put that pressure on yourself. I honestly think that you have to understand every teacher is in exactly the same position this year. No one will get to June and have been able to teach everything that they thought they were going to teach. But
Mm-hmm.
if we can just hang in there, the learning will happen. And so just do what you need to do to meet the needs of the children that are in your care so that we can keep them at school and also that we can help preserve the teachers that are dealing with these children as well. We presented a presentation to the administrators in August where we really talked about the importance of what we call the cascading helper or the
Mm.
cascading
Mm-hmm.
alpha. That we encourage our DGs to take care of their people in the board office, and people in the board office to take care of their principals, and the principals to take care of their teachers, so their teachers and staff can take care of the children. And we need to, those of us that are in behind the scenes need to continually be there and giving the break and letting people know, and maybe taking some of the pressure off, because this was a young teacher who wanted to be a good teacher. But right now, just going through the curriculum isn't going to be the measure of what we need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think everyone needs to be getting back
Yeah.
to their classrooms and to their schools and to the jobs that they're doing in whatever way they are doing them. And we thank you all for having taken the time to come, for your wonderful feedback. I really appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that. And we wish you strength and good health. And we know that you are the people that our children need. And when we all work together, our children will feel safer and better about the world that we find ourselves in, because they look to the adults. And if we can maintain a sense of calm, a sense of hopefulness, a sense of it's okay, we're going to get through this, our children will be fine.
Mm.
So I thank all of you. And if you have
Thank you very
questions or
much.
comments, yep, thanks, Martine and Catherine, and just
Thanks,
wish you
everybody.
guys all the best.
Hmm.